meet Shady Dreyer, whose 12-year-old son, Blake, was diagnosed at the age of 8 with Tourette Syndrome. Welcome to The Loft, Shady.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Shady, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your story with your son and the journey that you have come so far in. We appreciate it. We know that it is a sensitive subject, and a lot of people might be uncomfortable, but you're safe here on Afternoon Express, and we know here that you're in safe hands. So let's just start off the conversation right at the top. Shady Lee, we have spoken to Radlin, who in the beginning of your journey, you reached out to for support in search of answers. Now we want to know how Tourette Syndrome has impacted on Radley personally, but we now want to find out from you as a parent and the caregiver of someone with Tourette Syndrome. How has it impacted on you and the entire family? How did the journey start?
Well, Blake was basically showing signs of anxiety in around 2014 when he was 6 years old. And he was in grade R at the time, and his teacher called us in and said, look, he's seeming quite anxious lately and not being able to complete tasks on the same time as his peers. And they suggested we actually get him assessed. And in the interim of getting him assessed by an educational psychologist as well as a pediatrician, we noticed he started blinking his eyes excessively, nodding his head back and forth, and also developed a sniff and clearing of his throat. And, I would ask him and say to him, are you okay? Are you feeling sick? No, he's fine. He actually, in fact, doesn't know what I'm talking about. He doesn't acknowledge he's even doing this. And it was really tough on us, hey? We would constantly remind him, are you developing a habit? Why are you doing that? And he would just say, I truly can't help it. And I have no idea what you're talking about. So we obviously chatted to pediatricians, and we got him assessed by an educational psychologist who then suggested he possibly has a concentration problem, to which the pediatrician suggested we try a stimulant to try and help him build confidence in school, which progressively exasperated his tics, is what you call them. That's their involuntary movements and twitches. And this exasperated it. And at the time, he just mentioned it's just childhood tics, and each kid develops these sort of symptoms with response to stimulants. But Blake's just excessively got worse. And as I say, we were suspicious that he had Tourette's. My hubby and I would be concerned that we were possibly emotionally hurting him by constantly saying, you need to stop this, and not understanding him. Kids want your support and your understanding as parents. So it was very difficult for us in the beginning. But yeah, as I say, we ultimately got to a diagnosis 2 years later, and that's how we got to that.
Now, from when you've received the proper diagnosis, how did you then proceed with educating yourself on Tourette Syndrome and managing of it with Blake?
So my husband and I at the time, very suspicious of that he possibly had this condition, we did a lot of research, reached out to obviously individuals on social network platforms, mostly the support groups that are created around the world. But we came across Radlin as well and started engaging with him. I felt it was important to get as much advice and education on the condition as I could to help my son and make him feel comfortable with the condition, and chatting to people about it, sharing your stories, and that helps a lot. It makes you feel like you're not alone.
Okay, Shady Lee, so talk to us about what life is like today with Blake.
So we've come a long way. As I say, today he is exceptionally stable and happy. It was very hard in the beginning as well. We had to ultimately move schools because he wasn't responding to a very bigger number of kids in a classroom. He was having a hard time being bullied. So his therapist at the time, actually, once he was ultimately diagnosed in 2018 at the age of 8, his therapist suggested a smaller school, and actually academic remediation wasn't an option for Blake because he was actually quite smart. He just needed assurance and a bit of emotional support. So a play therapist at school has been exceptionally vital, and just understanding and acceptance from his peers and teachers is huge, and he's come such a long way. His tics, in fact, are quite mild, because it's very mood dependent and anxiety. Look, it's still there depending on how stressed he is, but he's come a long way, and life today is great. He's a happy kid, and he's in a great, stable environment.
Now, for the parents who are watching right now, what do you want them to know about Tourette syndrome?
Well, I think for parents, it's very hard. And for me, it's just, almost, I won't say fighting, but you need to make sure that people that engage with your child, people they go to school with, their friends, the people around them, need to have acceptance and understanding. Reach out to support groups, get as much information as you can, and that's all they need. They really just want to be accepted, and their environment, be stable. So, that's all I can suggest. But always listen to them. It's difficult themselves to be going through it. I think support is vitally important. As you say, having a strong support group and structure is very important.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you here are showing and you're proof that you need not give up on anyone. It just takes some understanding, some education, and some growth within for you to be able to help someone else, whether you are a parent, caregiver, or guardian of someone with Tourette syndrome or their own tics. Thank you so much, Shady Dreyer, for sharing your story with Blake and how your family has been able to take full control of this syndrome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Now, South Africa, just like that, it is possible. It might seem frustrating in the beginning. It might seem like you don't have answers. But with the right education, with the right experts, and with the right help, you might be able to alleviate some of those pressures with those experiencing Tourette syndrome. Please do head over to our social media platforms, use the hashtag Afternoon Express, and share your thoughts.